podcast and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Joe from Startuprad.io, your startup podcast and YouTube blog from Germany. I'm here again on the second day of Landed and do have Tuck with me. Hey, welcome.
Hey, good morning. How is everyone?
We should tell our viewers that it's actually morning here in London. So how did you do with the pub crawl last night? You joined it?
Yeah, I joined for a little bit and then left quite early to be safe for today, to be fresh.
Okay. Admittedly, I was boring and I wasn't there at all. But you're here because you're working for a startup company, right?
I am indeed, yes. I'm working for a regtech company called ComplyAdvantage.
And what do you guys actually do?
Well, we're hoping to revolutionize AML screening and monitoring.
For our viewers who have completely no clue at all, it's anti-money laundering. So that means there are lots of regulations out there where banks, insurance company, all financial services companies, and a lot of other companies as well have to screen the customers, their transactions, and look for signs of money laundering. Exactly.
Yeah, sure.
And it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, and that's what we found, and that's what we was trying to improve on. Traditionally, there's been a lot of issues completing these tasks, and that contains a lot of manual work, which is unnecessary. It can be high false positive rates. There's been poor integration.
Which means your system, you're using a false positive. It spits you out. Okay, look at this transactions. You look through it, and there's no hint of money laundering. So it was a positive from the system, but it was actually false. So
yeah, exactly. So that can be very infuriating. You're doing a lot of work and remediating these false positives, which is unnecessary and doesn't need to be done if you have the correct system and the correct technology in place. So that's exactly what we was hoping to do, and what we have done. We've been around for 4 years now, and we've been making huge strides in solving these common issues that are found in the industry.
What are those issues? Because assume like 90 till 95% of the people out there have no clue how to fight money laundering and other things like what a PEP is and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. So our process is just one step in the process, and with these regulations, there are lots of things that you have to do, and that's KYC, which is Know Your Customer and ID verification. However, what we prefer to concentrate on is the need to check your customers when you onboard them. So what that means is checking them against sanctions lists. You may have seen in the news recently, Donald Trump released his latest sanctions lists, and there's so many lists such as this that you need to be checking against to make sure you're not working with anybody else.
When we talked before, it was like a 49 sanctions list. So it's not like a list. It's websites full of content of people, of legal entities, and you have to bring them somehow into your system and check for all of them if you don't want to get in trouble. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So you're checking against all these sanctioned people. On top of that, you need to be checking for politically exposed people. So that can be politicians, kings, judges,
generals.
Yeah, generals, army generals, of course. There's so many people that can be influenced in this anti-money laundering fight.
That means you're basically checking their accounts if they don't get any bribery from outside of the country, where they are. For example, a judge somewhere from a different country has an account with you and he gets like 2 million. And then you have to consider it under those circumstances, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you need to be aware of this when you onboard a customer to make sure that you can keep an eye on these kind of things that goes on. So you need to be aware that it doesn't mean that you can't work with a politically exposed person. It just means you need to be aware.
And it doesn't mean they are all taking bribes. Just it means there's a regulation. You have to.
Sure, yeah. And on top of that, what we've done to enhance the offerings that were there previously is we have introduced adverse media, and we do this very well. So as well as alerting you to if a sanctioned person, or it can be a sanctioned company as well, we let you know if there's been any kind of negative news in the media, be that money laundering, sexual exploitation, anything that can come up in regards to the name of your customer that you've checked will all show up in our system on a consolidated profile. And we've been creating this database, and it is a proprietary database. There are only a few companies in the world who actually own this proprietary database for AML data. And the difference between our data and everybody else's in the marketplace is we no longer use human analysts. As we were discussing earlier, there's lots and lots of companies and people in the world in a very volatile world that is constantly changing. And as a human analyst, whether you have 500 or 1,000, it's almost impossible to keep these profiles updated.
To get this in perspective for our viewers, basically there are whole departments of people, and they sit in front of a system and they get spit out transaction after transaction people, and they have to check it for money laundering, for embargo violation, for something like that.
Sure.
It's a boring job if you're checking it all the time and nothing comes up.
Yeah, so what we've done is we've used artificial intelligence and machine learning, so we don't need any human analysts. All of our data is updated every single day. Every risk profile you can guarantee is up to date and accurate, which is something that wasn't the case before in the industry.
Because you're doing it automatically instead of manually.
Yeah, exactly. Everything is done automatically. There is no need for a human analyst to sit there and read a piece of news and then update the system. So to put that into context, with Donald Trump's latest sanctions last week with Iran, we had all of that information updated in our system within 15 minutes.
Can you give our viewers like an impression how much this is? Was it like 4 lines of text, or was it like 100 pages of...
Yeah, exactly. So it's a big updated document basically, and that had to be scoured. So if you take our competitors, some of the traditional names in the industry, it took them between a week and 2 weeks, and we had it done in 15 minutes.
That's pretty good. And after those 50 minutes, was it immediately available for your clients?
Yeah, exactly. So we're cloud-based, and everything, as soon as it's updated on our system, is immediately available for our clients too.
What I also found interesting, because I have here some of the papers you had in your booth, and actually you've done a case study with one bank.
Sure.
And the false positives we talked about before went down like 84%.
Yeah, we've been well known to reduce the false positives by a high number, which means less work, and you can focus more on other sides of your business and grow from there. So the way that we reduce the false positives is to make our data highly configurable. So like we were discussing, if you're working in mainland Europe, you don't need to screen against APAC or Asian sanction lists or politically exposed people, because they aren't your customers, and all that does is provide a greater risk and a greater pool to pick out names that were incorrect and false positives. So what we do is we allow you to configure depending on a company's risk-based approach and how wide or thin they want to do and what jurisdictions they work in.
Oh, just a quick story on that, because especially when you change between languages, between alphabets, between ways of writing, there's always confusion on how to spell a name. So basically, that's a big headache for those analysts. I remember the ruler of Syria and his family name. He was...
Al-Bashir?
Yeah, and you could spell it like 60 different ways, the Economist wrote, and you have to keep it in mind. It's really tough work, and if you just miss one of the spellings, your bank can be in big trouble, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that, because obviously these fraudsters and bad people, as we like to say, are they're very cunning, and there will be certain ways that they change their name, or there'll be aliases.
Or they use legal entities, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's not that those people are dumb and go there with their ID card. They use like 6 different shell companies between them and the actual company that conducts the illegal business. So very interesting area.
Yeah, and what we do to counteract that is we do this in 2 ways. So we consolidate any known nicknames or difference in names into one single profile, whereas previously you may have found 12 different profiles for one person, depending on how many names they had. So what we do is we pull all those together into one consolidated profile, so you can just have one strict view, and for each name that you search will bring up the same one profile. On the other side of that, you mentioned the different spellings and the different nicknames, and sometimes people can misspell their name on purpose, knowing that they would come up on a certain list. So in order to kind of remove the issue of this and you missing these people, we have a thing called fuzzy logic. So what that means is there is a certain amount of leeway. So for example, my name being Zach, my birth name is Zachary. So if you had a higher fuzzy logic and I typed in Zach, but you was looking for Zachary Bennett, I would still come up under a nickname. So that's one way that we make sure that you're accurate and safe.
First time you talked to me about fuzzy logic, I thought you give your computers a little bit of whiskey.
Yeah, or the hair, and fuzz the hair up.
Great. You'll find Zach's profile and the link for the company website down here in the show notes. So just have a look if you're interested. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having you here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
That's all, folks. Find more news, streams, events, and interviews at www.startuprad.io. Remember, sharing is caring.